Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 14 of Daffy's Roundtable. This week's episode, we will be continuing our conversation with Alex Menke of FrogDaddy. So, without further ado, let's dive right back in. So you already kind of put out there that you're a big
Yeah.
Rapashi person.
Yes. Big.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I like Alan.
Yeah.
I've known him for a long time.
That's awesome.
His supplements are really good. I mean, they've withstood the test of time. I've had great success with them. It does not mean that some new person with a new supplement is inferior. I'm not saying that, but I am saying these have really been tested well. It's an FDA approved facility. All the processes are really great. The customer service is good. He's been doing this a long time.
That's awesome.
So with that, yeah, I mean, I innately trust his supplements just because I've used his other stuff. So if I see a new one come out, I'm like, it's probably good.
It's probably good, right?
Now I will say, like a lot of crested gecko people shop with me too, and I would say Pangea does better in the flavor department for like crested geckos like their stuff better. But again, the formulation is really solid.
No, I was gonna say I could tell you from coming from the reptiles into the dart frog side
Yeah.
that Rapashi is doing really well on that side too. And
Yeah.
but yes, the geckos do tend to like the flavor of Pangea more. I absolutely
I
agree with that.
I can't say. Yeah, I can say for frogs that is solid. We use 3 to 4 supplements with frogs only. We use the calcium plus. That is a daily, every feeding. It depends on how many times you feed a week. Or sorry, it doesn't depend on how many times you feed a week. I always use it.
Okay.
So I feed 3 times a week.
Perfect.
But
okay.
Yeah, a lot of people feed more than that, and that's totally fine. You want to feed usually until your dart frog doesn't want to eat anymore, and then you stop. So basically, a lot of people always tell me, like, well, do you use other supplements? When do I use them? How do I use them? So there's a few other ones I want to highlight.
And those are questions I had all written down, so please do.
Yeah, so I'll do that.
Yeah.
The second one and the most important one after calcium plus is probably vitamin A plus. It's the one with the dart frog on it. But this is also really dangerous. And I think I brought it up before somewhere that they probably should change that. The cover. The reason is a lot of new people in our hobby, I don't know what it is, but they don't always pay attention to details. That's probably just people in general. Not our hobby, so I misspoke on that front. But people hear, oh, what was that dart frog supplement, the plus one? And they look and they see a dart frog on it. That's really dangerous if you overdose that. I had a person that was feeding that every feeding because they misheard calcium plus, and they're like, they saw a leopard gecko on the front, and they were like, that can't be it,
Yeah.
And they saw the vitamin A plus, and they're like, oh, it has a dart frog on it. That must be the dart frog one, and that is dangerous because that's the one that's vitamin A. You have hypervitaminosis A, and you can kill your frogs pretty quick with that one. Wow. So like I said, I had a guy that was feeding that every feeding for 2 weeks, and he's like, yeah, my frogs are a little lethargic. Don't know what's going on. And I was like, whoa, what supplements are you using? He was like, it's our dart frog one, the vitamin A plus every feeding. And I'm like, holy shit, that's like twice
too much
max. Usually, so vitamin A plus is really great. It's a fantastic supplement, but calcium plus already has a dose of vitamin A in it. You're only really using vitamin A plus, which is again the blue bottle with the dart frog. You do not want to use that much. You're using that once a month on adults, and that's going to help with breeding. It helps with the egg case formation. It's a good supplement to increase fertility. So
just once a month.
Yes, just once a month.
If you're using more with breeding females?
Yeah. If you're having trouble, if you're having a lot of blanks, you can try it twice a month. I wouldn't use it more than that. Again, I mean, there's not a huge risk for overdose, but if your frogs are really fat, if they're eating a high-fat diet of like larvae and things, if you're trying to get them to breed, a lot of people also increase the fat. Vitamin A is a fat-soluble vitamin, so it even increases the danger twofold. So that's where you can run into real issues if you don't know what you're doing.
Interesting.
Yeah. So Don't overdo that one, but it's really useful tool for breeding on long-term health, long-term success. We also use Super Pig. That's a pigmentation enhancer. It's also been shown in one paper, not directly, but that carotenoids can increase breeding success.
Okay.
That was done in Ufaga as well. So we do use that about 1 to 2 times a month. And the last one is Super Vite. I have started working this in. I never used to. It is completely optional. Your frogs don't need it, but it is nice to have. And as more research comes into play with dart frogs soaking in minerals, soaking in mud, we're finding more and more information about where dart frogs really are and what they're doing all day. And we found that a lot of the times they are under leaf litter, but they're also choosing mud pockets, things that have muddy water to soak in. And this is due to minerals passing through the skin. So Supervite actually adds a lot of these minerals in a pretty wide profile. And so we're doing some dosing with that. We're doing twice a week. Not twice a week, sorry, twice a
Twice
month.
a month.
Yeah, twice a month. You can do it more though. It's not, you're not gonna be at much of a risk for an overdose on that. So you can do it more often. Some people do it once a week. I do it, once biweekly. So we haven't seen any direct benefit, but I've only been doing that for the last like 8 months. So for a breeding cycle kind of thing, it's going to take a few years for me to really get, is this doing better than what I was doing? And as you know, there are so many variables at play.
For sure.
My pairs are getting older. I have less time to check for babies. I may be missing some. So it's really hard. And if you're only doing that with Ufaga, you're still relying on the parent's eggs to fortify the tadpole. Are those minerals being passed through the eggs? Not really. They're being resynthesized into eggs. So the egg profile does change a little bit, as we know, but it doesn't change a lot. And I can't say anything with adding Supervite is going to increase anything at this time. We don't know. We don't have any controlled experiments with Repashy supplements. I mean, this stuff is all too new to science, and there's no research being done in it because there's no reason. There is, but not to like governments.
There's no benefit to
They're
them.
not going to give you a grant for this
No,
research.
for
You're
sure.
going to
Yeah.
do this out of your own pocket, in your own lab that's sustained by your own staff.
Yeah.
Again, out of your own pocket. So nobody's doing this.
Absolutely.
Would I like to in the future? Absolutely. Can I do it now? Absolutely not.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, you brought up a lot of things I would like to touch on there.
Sure.
Firstly, I heard a rumor that vitamin A expires after 4 months of when you open the bottle. Does this make any sense to you?
Yeah, oxidate. I mean, it doesn't expire; it just loses efficacy. As it's exposed to oxygen, oxygen gets in it. Those oxygen molecules begin reacting, and it's called an oxidation process. It does make it less effective over time, and that's with a lot of supplements. Calcium Plus too. Not really because of the calcium per se, but all of the other things that are in it, yes. But I would say the gold standard is 6 months, not 4.
Not 4.
And
Okay.
you can still use it after that time, but you need to keep it refrigerated because a lower temperature also slows down the process. So dark, cold, tightly sealed, that will all help. But yeah, generally speaking, what I tell people is after 6 months, get a new bottle of it. It's $10.
Yeah, it's not expensive.
Again, it's how much do I like these animals on an ethical standpoint? Should I, it's like buying your dog, it's like buying your dog treats, does it need
It's
treats?
going the extra step.
Yeah, it's just an extra step, and it's a good practice.
Yeah.
It's just to prevent things like, like MBD or anything from forming. You just want the best life for your animal, and this is the best life we know to provide with. You can only go based on what we know. And humans, for the longest time, not to get philosophical, but we've always been limited to the science, to what we know how to do. Could we provide better care to these frogs? I'm sure.
Sure.
Yeah, but what does that mean? So right now we're doing the best we can. And that is replacing your supplements after 6 months, keeping them in the fridge, keeping them fresh. And that's what you want for your animals. You want the best. So,
No, for sure. That's awesome. Yeah. And then on the Supervite, so I was actually using it for 2 years from when I started keeping dart frogs. And
oh
then again,
really? So
speaking,
you've
yeah,
used it longer than me.
I
That's
have,
good.
but then for the last 8 months, actually, for speaking to dart frogs, I was told that like take it out, and it's actually like something we don't recommend. So it's interesting that you are
Oh,
now working with it. I'll probably work it back into the cycle as well, and then
yeah,
'cause I don't see what like it just it seems, but again, you know what? It has a dart frog on the cover, and it was very when I first started getting to
yeah.
dart frogs, I was like, "There's a dart frog, I must need this," and
Yeah, I
so
think it's like
100%.
I think it's actually like a red-eyed tree frog, but still,
Oh, right, yes,
it's
yes,
still a
right.
frog,
It's not a
So
frog, yeah.
you have cover art with of the on the label,
Yeah,
which is totally fine, and I love it. I mean, you can't make calcium plus and say, "Well, I can't fit all the animals on there that
exactly.
benefit from this." Of course you
Yeah,
can't.
yeah,
So it makes sense because vitamin A plus is almost exclusively used on dart frogs. So I get why it was chosen. But yeah, I mean, again, just like you should be researching what you're putting in your body, you should be researching what you're putting in your pets' bodies, generally speaking.
100%.
But yeah, there's a lot of information.
Yeah.
Again, these are new products. In terms of scientific knowledge, a lot of stuff's new.
10 years
ADHD
is
medicine's new.
interesting. Yes.
We have no long-term studies on ADHD medication. I mean, I only say that because I'm familiar with the studies. I took in Certa for 6 years, but it's a good bridge to
Mhm.
talk about supplements. I mean, they're supplements. We don't even really know what this stuff is doing long term. We can hypothesize because we know the interactions of the molecules, interactions of the minerals. We have a vague idea of what dart frogs eat in the wild. So how do we replicate that? But again, it's not all guesswork per se, but it's still working itself out. I feel like in 20 to 30 more years, we'll have a much better idea of what this stuff does.
Yeah, I agree. We're only seeing like 5, 6 years worth of the research now. But
Yeah,
when again, like you said, 30 years from now, we'll have frogs who have lived their entire life cycle on these
yeah,
supplements and be
and
able
we'll
to.
have generations and generations of that. We have none of that yet.
No,
So
I
yeah,
absolutely
we
agree.
see frogs living a long time, having good breeding success. We know a little bit, but it's still really bold to assume that we know a lot. Um,
For sure.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
awesome. And then one more thing you touched on is the frogs sitting in mud and basking in minerals. And this is something that I've been trying to read a lot more about. Again, not finding much
there's
information,
not much information
and
on.
trying to
Yeah,
find something. And you know what? This is something that I'm going to ask you in a few minutes. But even finding or locating the supplies to even try this myself has been tough for me. But
yeah,
I've been hearing about calcium clay or bent. I probably gonna butcher this name, bentonite clay.
it's night clay. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's night clay. Yeah.
is that supposed to replicate what you mentioned earlier, sitting in minerals and kind of absorbing that through it? And
Yeah, to a point. There's a lot of other minerals at play too, but calcium is obviously one of the most important
mhm,
ones. For very obvious reasons for bone development. That's primarily the most important. A lot of that clay is used as a substrate. There's a lot of companies that actually manufacture that. There's recipes online on Dingerboard for manufacturing it yourself. It can get a bit expensive. It's not super cheap, but it's also not out of reach. But what I feel like is out of reach is like I think Chase is one of the only people at Houston Frogs. I think he's the one of the only people that actually sells it in decent hobby like quantities.
okay,
Josh Yates is another guy that sells it. Um,
I
his
don't believe I'm
spring
familiar.
Yeah, I mean, again, this stuff it's kind of like nobody's really taken charge, like a big company really hasn't gotten into it. But yeah, I mean, I use it in my Pamilio grow outs. It seems to help every time their tongue hits it, they're getting a little bit of that calcium uptake when they're only on Springtails, which are really high in phosphorus. So you have to balance that ratio for proper bone development.
So you're growing the froglets kind of on this clay, so that when they're grabbing the springtails,
Yeah,
so you
absolutely.
can't. So actually, just a quick side note here: do you dust your springtails, and is it possible to dust springtails
It is possible. It's just hard for the dust to stick to
to
them
stick to them?
long, so you have to do it quickly. So if you do use it, you most of the time I just say use clay cultures. So you get a 32-ounce deli cup, whoop, and you'll basically have your culture here, and you'll open it up into the deli cup, and then tap a little bit of calcium, swish it around. Then you can quickly feed and just repeat the cycle.
Okay.
Um, it does work, but having a feed dish made of calcium clay, like a deli cup that has calcium clay in it, and then you dump the fortified springtails in there, that really does help with uptake. Um, Again, these are all loose, anecdotal evidence kind of thing.
Yeah,
There's
for
no
sure.
numbers to back this up. This is just what we do.
Just based on
Um,
experience,
I've noticed success. Do I lose froglets? Yes. Everyone does. Nobody talks about it.
especially
But
at your
yes,
scale of how many frogs
yeah,
you have. It's a natural part of breeding,
it's a
for sure.
natural part of breeding. And
Yeah.
we want to lose frogs? Sometimes, yeah,
Yeah.
because those frogs aren't, they're not as
They
strong
wouldn't
as
have
the other
survived in the
ones.
wild.
So, yeah, so a lot of the time, I brought this up in my last one, and I got a little flack for this on my last live stream on Instagram, is the whole euthanization talk. Now, we don't have to go into that necessarily, but we're breeding every single frog to, you know, froglet, and every tadpole's making it now. And I'm starting to not do that. I'm starting to let them eat each other and stuff
Okay.
because you get such better froglets from that. That's what happens in the wild. You get an egg deposit in a pond, there's only one dendrobates coming out of that one because dendrobates are really cannibalistic.
They're eating all of them.
Most of the time, they're eating their competition.
Interesting.
Ranatomea are way worse than dendrobates even. Ranatomea are almost impossible to raise communally. I have done it before, but it's very difficult. You lose at least 50%. Even in a
Wow.
10-gallon tank, every time I start with about 7 to 8, I usually end up with 3 to 4. So half of them die by
Wow.
tail biting, things like that. Then they start eating each other, even if there is plenty of food available.
Yeah.
There's no real research on tadpole communication, but there is research on tadpole communication in other species. So it is safe to assume, lightly assume, that these tadpoles are talking to one another, at least acknowledging each other's existence. Again, we don't really know how far this goes, but they're aware that they're in there.
That's so cool.
And yeah, they're together and they're attacking each other, even when there is food available. So that is anecdotal experience, but it's also in the literature. Um, so yeah, I'm like, screw it.
Yeah.
Give me the best froglets to sell to my customers.
Let the strongest survive.
Not gonna have 20, but I'm gonna have 10 really good ones.
Mm.
And I think on a large scale breeding effort, that's important. I don't want to be putting a lot of weak genetic stock out there. Why would I want to do that? That's gonna cause problems down the line. And we're not seeing that yet. We have seen it. We actually have seen it with a few species. I have Santa Isabels that have like the Twilight syndrome. They literally look up and do backflips just like the hamsters do. They have
Wow.
neurological disorders.
Kind of
Every
like the
single one of them
spider
have.
morphin ball pythons.
Yep, yep. So I'm
Wow.
noticing this is the first time I've noticed it is this year. So my whole breeding group, every single froglet is coming out with that now. So that breeding group is,
Done.
yep, it's gone.
Wow.
So it's sad, but like this is the stuff we have to work on, especially if these countries are starting to shut down imports. If we're not going to get these frogs again, we need to work as a hobby to make the best captive stock we can. Um,
Absolutely.
so that's another thing, but yeah, that's totally derailing. But you
No,
know,
but that's a very interesting point. Like you're right. At
it's,
some point, we're gonna stop being able to bring new ones out, and if we just
nobody
let
has
all
talked
of
about
them,
this yet.
yeah, if
Yeah,
we let all of the frogs in the hobby kind of just get to that point, unfortunately,
yeah,
we'll have nothing left. So it is important to keep the genes strong as well. You know, switching bloodlines, not inbreeding.
yeah,
It all definitely plays a factor.
for
Um,
sure.
no, that's awesome. And then I probably should have touched upon this one from the beginning. But in terms of going back to the enclosure,
Hmm.
I'm sure you're familiar with Troy Goldberg,
Yeah,
and there's the
good
whole
friends.
yeah, okay, awesome, yeah. So there's the
Oh yeah.
whole I think they call it the Troy Goldberg method now, where he's using kind of the sponge to escape the tags and all of that.
I'm so
Um,
glad he has like a thing attached to his name now. But it's,
yeah,
it's the
right.
freaking it's the freaking foam pad.
And you
Like
know
this
what?
is
I'm
what
up in
makes him
Canada,
famous. It's
and
so
people come in.
sad.
Yeah, yeah. People come into the pet store and be like, "Yeah, I want to try the Troy Goldberg method," and
So
they're
funny.
like, "Yeah." But what's your opinion on that? Do you think it works better than ABG mix? Do you think it's less bacterial problems? Do you think, yeah? What's your opinion on it?
My opinion is uneducated. I have
Okay.
only done it like twice, and most of the plants we use in the industry are at least hemiepiphytic, which means they have part of them can be epiphytic if they need to be. Then what that means is they can grow on another plant, but that means they can grow without substrate. In this
Right.
term, it's going to mean they grow without substrate.
You're like growing
Um,
on a piece of
yeah,
wood, or like,
there's
yeah,
lithophytes. There's all sorts of
yeah,
you know,
bromeliads and the air
yeah,
plants, and yeah,
yeah. So yes, it does cut down on a few problems like substrate compaction. Using a synthetic material is better in some ways because of structure. Over time, it's not going to compress as at least like nearly as
as
much,
much
if
as
at
so.
all. Um, the airflow between it is nice. It's very stable. Um, and then ABG mix, it becomes unstable over time. You have things dying, so plants that die on top of it. There's more organic material in that section, and we're talking long periods of time: 6 months, 8 months, 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah, yeah,
So you're having your substrate go through evolutions of becoming this coming from this airy nutrient poor mix into something that's dense but nutrient rich, um, but not necessarily great because it's full of a lot of bacteria. Anaerobic bacteria can start to build up in old substrate. We know this. So having no substrate alleviates that whole issue of compaction and the whole issue of having your substrate need to be renewed. But there's a whole other issue that comes with that too, is plant nutrition. Do they get all their stuff from frog poop and decaying leaves? A lot of it, yeah. Um, but
enough of it.
yeah, and I would say enough, and
Yeah,
that's
okay.
where I'm more for than against. But there's also some things that can't grow on it very well. Um, I had very limited success with some of my more sensitive species. Some of my begonia species weren't really happy with it. Um, and I grow a lot of different plants. So is it useful? Definitely. Would I love to do more tanks with it? Yeah. I don't have enough experience to say yes, it's a good method or no, it's not. I love Troy. I love what he does, and I love the concept of it. Now, long term, again, long term, do we have long term success with it? No one's really done it long
Nobody
term.
knows.
We don't
It,
know.
even Troy has only been doing it for what, a couple of years now, three, two or
Yeah,
three
I mean
years. So
it's
yeah,
really a small time frame to say this
right.
is better. So yes or no, can't give you. It's a maybe.
No,
It's a cool thing, and I encourage people to try it. There's no real drawback to it. I don't think in terms of frog husbandry, I don't think there's any drawback. So I would say give it a go. Um, so
I
I'll do a few of my new builds with it, and we'll start the clock. We'll see what happens.
you know what? I'll do that with you as well. I'll set up a
Yeah,
tank with it as well, and we can start the
we can
clock as well.
see.
I'm curious. Yeah.
We'll get more
Because
data on it and see where everybody's having success, and how much moss do we put on there, how much leaf litter, what do we do after the leaf litter all decays and it's in the foam, like, is it really a foolproof method?
right,
Does having organics mixed with synthetic, is it better than going full bio? Is the soil a huge component of dart frog husbandry? Because it's a huge component of bioactive husbandry.
right.
What How does that pertain to dart frogs? So yeah, a lot of questions still unanswered, but I love the method.
Yeah, I'm also very interested in learning more about the method because it looks like it's a good idea, and I feel like even long term, maybe like less bacterial growth in the foam because it
Yeah.
is a synthetic material.
Yeah.
I don't
There's
know,
a lot
but
more airflow between it. So I think in that regard, it could be better than
exactly.
substrate.
Yeah,
So it's worth looking at for sure.
definitely worth looking into. No, for sure. Okay, awesome. And then, what about when it comes to breeding? Do you do all frog? I've heard of this the term the dry periods, and I've tried it myself,
Mhm.
obviously with success. But do all species need it? Do you is it how do you decide? Is it a good idea to have a dry not dry method? That's aquarium talk.
No,
Dry
no, it's
period.
fun. The dry period versus wet period, there's a lot of people that cycle their frogs.
Yeah.
Dart frogs don't need to be cycled. They can breed year round,
Okay.
but it's not great for them to do so, in my opinion. And again, this is just spitting basic biological facts, so to speak. Having animals breed year round constantly is going to deplete them of certain nutrients. Um, Anything to make eggs, like your vitamin A, can get really low in
You're
your
tiring
frog.
them out.
Yeah, and calcium too. I mean,
Mhm.
making the goop of the egg, that needs calcium too. Um, that is going to be problematic in terms of having them breed constantly. Now, a lot of them will self-regulate though. I mean, you have to think these animals are not, at gunpoint like you got to breed. Um, there are triggers that help them breed: high humidity, abundance of food, negligible stress, no predators. This is all going to promote breeding. So dart frogs are pretty easy to breed. Um, they're feeling fat, happy, and safe, and pretty content. But at some point, they're going to be like, shit,
I need to calm down.
Yeah, I mean, all of my frogs self-regulate when I don't put them through a cycle, and I have never done a true cycle before. This is the first year I've ever done it. Um,
Okay.
I actually just started too. I started last month when I finished moving my tanks, my first set of tanks. I decided not to hook up the Mist King again. I mist my tanks now every 3 days. Um,
Wow.
they get very dry. They still have enough water in there for the frogs to not die, of course. It never gets dry enough to where it's like a problem,
Yeah.
but it's much drier than normal. I'm feeding a little bit less. Um, and so I'm going to do this for about 4 months. I'm going to kind of
4 months.
mimic a drier cycle. Usually it's about usually about 4 to 6 months. It depends.
Okay.
But most time the dry cycle is around there. You can give it a few months, give or take, to ramp it up and ramp it down so that it's a little more gradual. I feel like giving them a shock is not a great thing, like
Yeah.
what I did. Um,
Just kind of
they're in
slow down the watering and
yeah, they're in the
slow
middle of
down the.
sitting tadpoles. They're like, "What the just happened?" There's no rain. Um, don't
Yeah.
advise that. Again, I always
No.
make mistakes my first time, and that's kind of my
But you make them so we don't have to, right?
yes, yes. I'm the guinea pig here. But yeah, no, a lot of people do it, and it's great to do your. Jared Ruffing's Rantomea. I know he pulls all of his film canisters for a few months a year, so they're not enticed to breed. There's
Mhm.
no place to put the tadpoles. There's no bromeliads in his tank. Um,
Interesting.
so yeah, so that makes sense to me. Um, so I pulled all that, and we'll see how it goes. But then there comes a problem with stock. Well, if none of your frogs are breeding, how
How are you gonna
you're gonna
sell
have
them?
a huge lapse of no frogs.
Yeah.
So to combat this, I get more pairs. So basically, that's all I can do if I'm not wholesaling, which I don't like doing.
Mhm.
Um, that's not something I'm very interested in. The I have done it before. I've had to do it. I have customers that bring their frogs back to me, but they're usually from my own pairs, so I know where they came from. I like to be really educated on my stock, but
Yeah.
regardless, the facility will be split kind of 50-50. What I plan to do when I get my 405 to 430 tanks, whenever I get finished with the facility, the walkthrough, um,
I would
I
love
will.
to see that.
Oh yeah, I'll split them in half. So half the facility will be on a dry cycle and the other half will mirror it, so to speak, give or take. I want to have around 200, 250 locales of dart frogs. I don't even know if there's 250. I don't really actually know how many localities are in the hobby.
I'm sure there's more than 250, just probably not in the hobby or
Yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
that's what I mean. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, no, yeah.
available. I want to
Yeah.
have at least 2 of everything so that I can do that. So that half the facility will be dry, half will be wet. Everybody gets a break. You have higher longevity of your females, reproductive wise. They're going to reproduce for longer periods of time. Gives them a nice needed break from that breeding activity. And then when you start to rain up again, it's dependability. You start after a dry cycle, you start pouring rain and food in there, they're going to breed like within a week.
You know they
You
are.
know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So it's like you can actually plan better than having your whole collection. Yeah, these frogs are breeding. No, they stop breeding now. When are you going to have X frog is
Yeah.
the most common question I get. And
I'm
I
sure.
don't understand why people ask this because I don't know. I'm waiting for them to breed.
It's like I'm waiting just like you.
I'm just like, dude, I can't predict when I'm going to have a frog available because it could literally be fine today and be dead tomorrow. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Whenever it's on the website is when it's available. Sign up for notifications. That's why that function is there. That is for you. But yeah, that's the thing I get with plants too. When are you getting these in? I'm like, dude, I grow all these. Like, whenever they're finished growing.
It takes time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a common thing and it's a problem. So I was like, how do we fight that issue? And it's cycling. Cycling almost determines, almost I haven't done it, but I know a lot of people that do. And as soon as they kick that rain back on, they heavy dose feeding, those frogs breed within the week.
Yeah.
And so that's a better way to predict. Yeah, this spring I'm gonna have babies because most likely, they drop, couple clutches, you have 40 eggs, you're going to have some make it,
something.
So, yeah, the cycling is a great thing. There's many benefits to that. New people cycling, no. Because when they hear the word dried out,
they think bone dry.
Dead frog,
Yeah.
Just get the husbandry down first. Then you can start experimenting after about a year or so of keeping and understanding the frog's behaviors. Because a lot of frogs will like hide in leaf litter or burrow if they're too dry. A lot of people are like, why is my frog always burrowing? And I'm like, this is where we're at. We're not ready to start cycling yet.
Yeah.
Like that's, so yeah.
And even understanding the enclosure itself, how long does it take to dry out?
Yeah.
What areas of it stay wet when it dries out? Like there's a whole
every tank is different.
Every tank is different. There's a whole mechanic to it.
I've made them all the same and they're all different.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Like, okay.
Yeah. You don't know where the moisture is hitting, where the plant is shading. There's so much factor to it. No, for sure.
So many. There's a lot of variables in this industry too, in the hobby. So many variables. And it's just, that's what makes it so hard to say anything is, but it's hard to make those rules because we have rules, but they're really hard to like back it up.
Yeah.
Like you asked me to back it up and I'm like,
that's just how we've been doing things.
That's what we've been doing and it works, but is there a better way? Yeah. Sure. I mean, that's why I encourage people to try things all the time. I don't like being the frog police necessarily and being like, hey, that's terrible. Don't have that water feature. Don't do this. Don't do that. Yeah. But there are reasons for it.
Yeah.
And new people see it first. And they're like, I saw that. That's what I'm doing. That's why people go to Petco and they see the frogs in the freaking thing. And it's like,
no, you're good. Go ahead.
It's like 30% humidity and they just don't know better.
They don't. Yeah.
They get home and they replicate the Petco environment, which you and I would think that's ridiculous. But to some person that literally just wants to buy a pet for their kid, they're not going to know. They've never seen this. They just think it's pretty. They want to take it home.
The only example of it they've seen is that Petco or PetSmart in our case.
A lot of people tell me that. They're like, well, this is what the breeder was keeping them in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, that was at a show. They're in fucking deli tubs. Like
they're not in
to me and you, it's just like asinine. But
come on.
It's like, oh, it was my first Repticon. I never, I didn't know they were kept like that. And I'm like, dude, they're not. Like, that's just to show you the animal. Like,
Yeah. See, and that's when it goes back to it. Do your research, people.
yes,
Yeah.
before you buy,
Before
do
you
your
buy.
research before you buy, or just
Absolutely.
get a mentor. Getting a mentor is great.
Yeah.
Somehow I magically have time to mentor people, but I schedule, phone calls with a lot of customers all the time. Like, you want to know about dart frogs? Have a chat with me, because within an hour, like me and you have done,
Yeah.
in an hour we have covered so many topics very
So
thoroughly.
many. And learned a
So,
lot. Yeah.
yeah,
Hopefully. And then, okay, so do you want to maybe touch on that? So you mentor people within the
yeah.
hobby? Is that, yeah? Would you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I love doing
Yeah.
that. That's something that, like, I don't have like an official page of like, hey, you want to be mentored? Because like that would be, it could probably be a little dangerous. But
Yeah.
if I notice somebody's really struggling, I'm like, hey, I own FrogDaddy or whatever. I've been doing this quite a while. If you have any questions, just PM me. I can walk you through something, or you can schedule a call. I've done tons of comments on Facebook posts that like that, telling people, hey, Thursday evenings, Fridays, I'm available, an hour of time. I can at least steer the person in the right direction, even if they don't have to buy from me. But again, it's getting people into the hobby, excited. Oh, I can do this. Oh, okay, that's what I needed to do. And if they're local, they have to come see the facility, because that's just a must.
Yeah. It's like an
Um,
attracting point.
yeah, I
And
mean,
you know what?
and
We're
it
just going
shows
way
you
back
what.
into circle.
Yeah,
So again, to customer service.
yeah, and it's good. It's good. We need that in the hobby right now. There's a lot of elitists still in the hobby. Not as much anymore as there was like even 5 years ago. A lot of the elitists have gotten too old.
Which is good.
No, I'm just yanking on them, but we butted heads when I started a company with a lot of the old dart froggers do not like new people coming
Of course.
in with
In every
companies.
hobby.
Yeah. Oh, of course. So you've got your gatekeeping.
Mhm.
That's just I mean, we could talk about that for hours, but the point is giving people a chance to enjoy the hobby is important. And as an upcoming business, um, and having enough experience to give people solid advice, I feel like that's kind of my job at this point, is to help the hobby along in a positive way. Just spread positivity. None of us know everything. I mean, Chase
At
has
all.
multiple degrees. I have multiple degrees in sciences. We still don't know shit. Nobody knows shit. Even your doctor's still figuring stuff out. Every single day we're learning new things. So
I
you
agree.
have to understand you were once at that point. And if you just kept getting shit on and hated on, no one, that doesn't do anything for you.
You wouldn't have gotten to this point. You would have left.
Yeah,
You would
of
have walked
course
out
I
of the
would have
hobby.
quit.
Yeah.
And that's what people do. Now the other side of that is people that don't take advice though.
Of course. Yeah.
That's another problem. There are a lot of,
Stubborn people.
well, I built this enclosure. I'm like, well, you
Build
build
it
it
wrong.
it's not gonna last in there, man. And you're gonna have a shitty day. One day you're gonna wake up and the thing's gonna be dead. And there goes your resentment, because then you're like, well, I just hate the hobby, and they throw in the
Yeah.
towel. And we don't want that. We want people to love and enjoy reptiles and amphibians as an entire industry. We don't always do the best job. Again, as sellers, we don't do the best job we
I
can.
agree. I
And
agree.
we got people on our ass. We got PETA on our ass. We've got a lot of legislation coming up that's terrible for our industry, because people that own these and sell these are not doing their jobs. We're not keeping our husbandry intact, letting freaking venomous snakes out of our facility.
Crocodiles
That
on
is,
loose in the streets, and
yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's
really
crazy.
dangerous for our hobby.
Of course.
And so as keepers, we need to do better. But, so there's two sides of that. There's two sides. So yeah, I mentor people because I want the industry as a whole to last a long time. Not just because it's self-serving. I mean, duh, that would help me. But it's a fantastic hobby. It's what I wake
Everything
up
helps
for.
everything.
Yeah. So I think there's two sides of that. So if I'm doing my part, I can help those people do their part too.
Yeah.
It's a win-win for everybody, even if it costs an hour of my time.
No,
Whatever.
and that's great. And again, like I said, this is why you guys need to choose who you support and what businesses you support. Because honestly, like,
I appreciate it.
and not even just to say it as from your aspect, but you just said it, you made a very good point there.
Yeah.
we have
Gotta
all these
choose the
people
right
on our
people.
ass. We have all this crazy stuff happening, and then we have like people keeping illegal species, and it's just
Yep,
putting more and more heat on us. So
it is.
the choosing
And it
who to
puts heat on
support
everyone,
on
even
everybody,
people that are doing it right,
and not
just
even
irresponsible
involved.
people. Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, for sure. Like picking and being smart about where you're purchasing things, who you're supporting, all that is really important. All right, we're kind of coming to the point where I like to end it, but I do want to
Okay.
ask you two more questions if that's okay.
Yeah, let's
Awesome.
do it.
So, what's your favorite and least favorite thing about the dart frog hobby? First of all, we're going back to the tough ones.
Yeah. That's another hard
After all
one.
of that, we're going back to the tough ones.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. The favorite thing I like about the hobby is the natural diversity we have to choose from is amazing. I mean, like I know with ball pythons, you have all your morphs, right? And people have worked really hard to isolate the genes. They have all their breeding projects. I mean, when, you know, not to go back with spiders, but even with pieds, long time ago, I mean, that was like crazy,
A big
right? I
thing.
mean, huge thing. For dart frog people, it's different. We're more purists, but it's cool because we have so much natural variation to choose from. There are so many species that are available for us to work with that are in the hobby. Um, and it's just an amazing experience to be able to keep, you go from one tank to two tanks to three tanks, then you have like a rack system, and it doesn't
Yes.
add much work. No, I know, I get
Yeah.
it. I have, it's
Yeah.
like
For sure.
you can actually physically keep a lot of these animals, and they're all different colors, different genera of frogs. So you have big frogs, small frogs,
Yeah.
you red ones, blue ones, and they're all kept in nice enclosures. It's like artwork. It's living art.
And this is something that's been brought up many times. Pieces of
Yeah.
art in your house, right?
Yes, and
Yeah.
that's a really cool thing. And a lot of people get true respite from their day jobs and their hectic life by sitting there listening to the frogs, viewing them. There's something about that because they are active during the day, because they are sometimes out in the open. It's a really cool hobby to have. And I think the group of the community is the other part of that. I do really like the community, but on the same type, I'll have to back up.
I really
And
hate the
I'll say
community.
the least favorite part of the hobby is some of the people in it.
Yeah.
It hasn't been an issue lately, but back when I got in, it was really bad. The gatekeeping was incredible. Now I know other hobbies have the same issue. A lot of the fish hobbies have that.
Hmm.
I know guppies and cichlids have
Killifish.
that bad. Yep. So there's
Killifish, sorry. Yeah.
killifish too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Huge.
All your yeah.
Yeah.
That's a huge locality one, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
Locality
Yeah.
based. Yep.
Yeah.
Anything that's locality based versus like line breeding or morphs or yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't want to drag this on, but the community can do better at making, first of all, making not information more accessible, because honestly it is. The information is everywhere,
Yeah.
but people don't really know how to look. And then secondly, they hear different things from different
Conflicting
places,
information. Yeah.
and it's contradictory. And that's the reason again that we have rules. It helps when we pound in these stupid, oh yeah, 10 gallons of frog. For you and me, that's like, no, well, not really.
Yeah.
But to new people, it's like, okay, 10 gallons of frog, got it. And I saw that 5 times. So that probably is it. Because the other sites had 5 gallons of frog, but most of the sites had 10.
10. Yeah.
So I'm going to do 10. So that's where to backtrack, that's where the rules come from.
Right.
It's what we've noticed helps the hobby. Now, there are places that proliferate just bad information, but it's usually rare. It's not usually detrimental. But yeah, to get back to it,
Yeah.
the hobby is great and it has its strong points and it has great people. I mean, I've met some of my best friends in the world have been from the hobby. People that have
Likewise.
gotten me through dark places in my life, I've met through this hobby. It is a beautiful hobby. I really do owe my life to the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side of that, my worst enemies have come from this hobby. My biggest haters have come from this hobby. Imagine hating me.
And your
I'm
biggest headache.
so likable. What is
Seriously.
yeah,
How
but
the audacity.
the audacity? Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's hard, but what I really mean is really helping new people get the information and not being condescending as hell while we're doing it. We just it gets repetitive. Yeah. People ask the same damn questions every day, but that's never going to change.
Yeah.
You might as well have a copy paste answer in your phone ready to go. I do.
Do
And
you?
I
Yeah.
literally just whatever, dude. You're not going to do the research. I got it right here
Yeah.
for you. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's one of the things. I don't think there's anything else I hate about it.
No, that's
I
awesome.
mean,
That's
it'd
exactly what I
be
was expecting you to say. Honestly, yeah.
it'd be hard to tell you I hate it if that's what I do for a living,
No, seriously, yeah,
Eh,
absolutely, yeah.
it's a passion project, so I mean, I love it. I do hate it. At the same time, there have been many times where I've broken down on my knees,
Stressed
cried
out.
in the facility on the concrete, but
But
it's
that comes with building a business, not from the
yeah,
frogs themselves or the
correct.
hobby itself,
So
right?
I
Yeah,
wanted to separate the two. I think,
yeah,
yeah, there's not much to hate. I mean, it's an exciting. It's very up and coming. It's it's it can be a beautiful experience. I think it's a little expensive sometimes. I do see that as being, it is a luxury to own a pet anyway.
hmm
But I feel like there used to be a little bit better. I know Chris Luce, even though he hates my guts for some weird reason, if he ever hears this, he had a great project for kids, and I was still gonna speak high about him because whatever. But
I'm not familiar with the person, but yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
yeah, he got out of the hobby years ago. But he used to do stuff with school kids that like gave them leucomelis. It was Luke's for little ones or something like that.
wow, okay,
And so he would coach the science classrooms through keeping them, and he would give them away. And I think that was really cool. And I would love to start doing something like that. Like, does it hurt your business? Not really. Those weren't people that were gonna get in anyway.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's cool to like have maybe sponsor some schools. We could really do that. I mean, I taught for heaven's sake. I mean, I should do that.
I would love to
You
do
know,
that as well. That sounds really cool.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
give people a chance to own the animals without gatekeeping it financially.
hmm
Um, because it is kind of restrictive. You can't really own dart frogs unless you have money. You don't need a lot by any means, but again, allowing access for everyone. And this is not a political thing necessarily, but I'm not going to get into politics, but having accessibility to a hobby is good. So
Yeah,
having low cost options that are feasible. Payment plans are a new thing. I've activated those on my website too,
that
like
is very cool.
Klarna, things like that. You can pay over time. That gives it's financially irresponsible for most people because most people have money and they just blow way too much, like me.
Yeah,
I use that all the time, but that's on like expensive shit that I can't
yeah.
afford. Um, but for other people, it's life changing. It's I can get these poison dart frogs, and I don't have to pay five
It's
hundred
not gonna.
dollars up front. I
Yeah,
can pay 100 and 200. But at the other end of that, you got to make sure you have enough money to take care of
to
the animal.
keep paying it. Yeah. And
Yeah,
yeah,
so
exactly. Fruit flies. I mean, like, yes,
yeah,
we're culturing them, but I mean, the
yeah,
initial setup when a culture crashes, it can be expensive. The
yeah.
supplements and
And
all
I
of
tend
that.
to help people if anybody's in dire need, and if anybody watching this at any point ever is on the brink of losing their frogs, we do Chase and I don't know. Again, if you're watching this 3 years from now, I don't know if Chase will still do this, but he does it right now. We both do. We do like what's called like emergency cultures. I'll ship them out to you next day if you absolutely need them. You don't have to pay for them at all. We do allow payment afterward if but if you can't pay for them and you're like, shit, I need cultures now. I need 5 of them. It's like $100 to ship all this stuff. I just need it. We'll save your animals for you because
That's awesome.
yeah, I mean, crashes happen at the worst times. I
Yeah.
had a huge crash in 2018. I lost 70 cultures at the same time,
Wow.
and I had
Wow.
114 or 115 tanks at the time. No food at all.
Wow.
I had to order from 4 different companies,
Just
30 cultures from everybody. I mean, it took days. I mean, my frogs started to get thin. It was in the middle of winter. So this stuff happens to people, and that can get you out of the hobby too. And we want people to be, again, excited about the hobby and in the hobby. And that's a huge thing. If they lose all their frogs, they're never getting in again, dude.
no, absolutely, and then
You know?
and for a very tragic reason too. So
Yeah,
no, I agree,
it
and that's
sucks.
awesome of you guys for doing
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, and we need to.
yeah,
Again, can I not spare 4 cultures? I make 300 plus a week.
yeah.
I'm making 375 right now. I can
Right.
spare 4, for somebody that's
375 cultures. Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, for people that are really struggling. Again, we need to do our part. So that's the service we do. We do a lot. We have a lot of services, just like Chase does. I mean, I'm not trying to pump him during this, but I'm just saying there
No,
are
that's awesome. Pushing the community as
yeah,
well. No, that's
yeah.
yeah. No,
There are smaller companies that are actually working really hard to help you guys out.
yeah.
So we really like you guys helping us out too. That's my only thing is people do tend to switch to us, switch to Chase, switch to any herp. The smaller family-owned businesses that are really trying their best to give you a really good customer service, good interaction, the right information. That's all we can do. That's what sells small business.
That's awesome.
And I would love to never lose that. That's my
Yeah.
goal. Never get big enough to where I lose that side of me. I will halt my own growth before I delegate every single task to somebody else with a manager doing I'm not that person. I'm never going to be that company.
As long as you halt on the dry goods supply and you keep collecting those frogs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
no, that's awesome. And then from there, like, so what's the future looking like for FrogDaddy then? Any big plans? Anything
There's
you want to put
yes,
up there? Yeah, yeah.
always big plans.
Awesome.
We
Yeah.
just constant. 2 years ago, I had no facility. I was in an apartment and I had basically half as much as I have now. So every year we do dramatic transformations. That never changes.
Awesome.
I actually have documentation of my pictures through the years, and it's insane. I mean, I have this picture in my home office of me. I don't know if y'all can see it, but
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
uh,
Oh, I
yeah,
can
it's just
actually.
me nesting tanks in a freaking in my
I can.
apartment. But that's a long time ago,
Yeah.
and it's humbling. But yeah, the future of FrogDaddy is hopefully bright. I always say hopefully because you never know. But
No, for sure. Yeah.
yeah. So we're working on a lot of expansion projects right now. We're getting everything out of anything smaller than 18 times 24. So we're mass ordering as many tanks as we can financially wise. I just got 80. So I have to chill after that, but we're doing automatic drains on them, full automation on them. We're remodeling all of that. We're expanding our plant Vivo Suns, so we're getting 6 additional 10 by 10 grow tents. That's a huge advancement in that department. And then, of course, we will keep building our rack system library style until we can open the exhibit. I would like to turn the breeding facility into an exhibit by 2023. That's my goal. Does that mean that'll happen? No, because it's a lot of work. Electrical has to be done. That's a huge expense. Heating and cooling, brand new units, 15K, 20K a piece. Got to do it because of all the excess heat from the lights will be, yeah. So a lot of work to do. But
No, I'll
yeah,
tell you what. When that opens up, you will be getting a visit from me.
yes.
For
Yeah,
sure.
we'll have a huge I'll shut down the facility for about 6 months before that. So we'll actually accept no pickups and we will not be doing any store. It'll be a closed thing for our grand reveal or whatever.
That would be
Whatever I end
awesome.
up calling it.
And then like a
But
huge opening and everything.
yeah,
Yeah, that'd be
our
awesome.
grand reopening at this point. Got to come up with something else. I don't know. I got
that's
to work
great.
on it though.
Yeah, 2023. You got 2 years. Yeah.
I got some time. Got some
Yeah.
time.
No, that's awesome. And then I do you ship international, by the way? Do you ship to Canada?
I
I wanted
don't.
to ask you this earlier, but is this in the plans? Not yet.
Is it in the plans? Eventually, yes. Frogs, no.
Frogs, no. Okay.
That's a complex import export thing. Is
No,
it
for sure.
possible? Yeah, to like Europe and stuff. Yeah, but like to other countries, some countries have really strict regulations on dart frogs. They're never going to accept them. New Zealand, great example.
Okay,
They're no import on those kind of animals,
interesting.
no matter what. They just don't allow them. Even if they are deemed harmless, sometimes Philobades terribilis gets a bad rap too because it's like, oh, it's the most poisonous animal,
Yeah,
vertebrate on the planet,
yeah,
and it's like to
but
most
not in
people,
captivity.
yeah, I know, but they don't care
They
about
don't
that.
die. Yeah,
Legislation doesn't care about that,
yeah.
and so yeah. But other stuff like dry goods, T-shirt, merch, yeah, sure. I'll eventually do it.
Yeah, no, that would be
Yeah,
awesome. Like I was gonna say, even supplies. Like if you one day maybe get your hands
yeah.
on some of that calcium clay or
It's
or
just
some of the
so
fruit fly media and all
expensive.
of that. Yeah, I know.
Ah,
Yeah, for sure,
that's the
for
thing that
sure.
kills customers. It's like $50, and I'm like, dude, that's the best I can do.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's the best rate I can get. So like for heavy stuff like dirt and charcoal and things like that,
It's
clays,
not worth it.
eh, it's not worth it for the customer even.
Hmm.
They gotta pay up the ass just to get a bag of dirt. It's like
Yeah,
it's not even feasible. Like I wish it was. Like I would love to. I do like shipping in my own weird
it's
masochistic way.
it's
I
interesting, huh?
yeah. I mean, I hate it, but I also love shipping packages. So
Okay.
I like the whole manufacturing process too.
Yeah,
It's in my blood. My dad's manufacturing, so that's kind of I guess where I get it from.
that's
But
awesome. Okay.
yeah.
Well,
So
hopefully one day then. Hopefully one
yeah.
day. Yeah.
Hopefully one day.
Awesome. In that case, Alex, thank you very, very much for coming on. Can you let everybody know where they can find you?
Yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
on Facebook, Instagram. Facebook, it's Facebook. It's the business page. It's frog. It's /FrogDaddy LLC, I believe. Instagram is FrogDaddy with an underscore. If you type in just FrogDaddy, you're gonna get an old man that will not give up his handle for some reason. Um, don't even think he's on there anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The website is www.frogdaddy.net. My cell phone number is on there. So is my email. So you guys can contact me through Facebook, email, cell phone, website direct. There are a million ways to get in touch with me. If you don't hear back from me in 3 days, text me again because I'm not ignoring you. I just get a ton of messages and it gets smashed down to the bottom. So a lot of people think I'm ignoring them. Not a lot. Actually, I'm pretty good about getting messages, but
Yeah, you got back to me almost immediately. Yeah.
yeah. So a lot of times I do, but sometimes I'm just way too busy. And by the time I
And it
get to the
happens.
message, I got 20 other ones on top of you. And yeah, so just message me again. You're not bothering me at all. Um, so that's how you can
No,
reach
for
me.
sure.
So
That's awesome. I will definitely make sure to have all of those links in the show notes as well.
awesome.
Um, yeah, so thank you once again for coming on.
Thanks
And
for having me.
hopefully one day we can have another conversation because that was incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
had a few podcasts where I've been on a few times actually. So that is no problem at all. If you want me back on, I'll do it again.
that would be
Super fun.
awesome. Where we can dive into even more Dart Frog talk.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Thanks.
Sweet. Thank you. All right, guys. Thank you very much for listening. That was Alex. Probably. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you very much for listening. That was Alex Menke from Frog Daddy. I'll make sure to leave all of his information in the show notes. I am Fadineddi from Daffy's Reptiles or Daffy's Roundtable for the podcast. Follow me everywhere as well, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.